Thank you for watching our online talk on Utrecht and the DOMcast. I am Maya, and this lecture is organized by SIP Utrecht, the Student Association for International Relations in Utrecht. We also organize other activities, such as drinks, parties, and trips abroad, and there's also an intellectual activity every Tuesday. However, due to the circumstances surrounding the coronavirus, these are currently mostly online. Tonight's talk will feature Thomas Roye and Maries Visser, presenters of the DOMcast. Welkom, Maries and Thomas.
Hi.
And the course of the evening will go as follows. Firstly, I will start with a short interview with them about their podcast and the mysteries they've uncovered along the way. And after that, there's also half an hour for the people watching at home to ask questions on YouTube and Facebook. We will start with that at approximately 8:30. So if you have any questions while watching, feel free to post them in advance. And then I would like to start with a bit of a broad question, which is, as an introduction, could you maybe explain the DOMcast to us?
Well, we started this project almost a year ago. We both did the same master, Cultural History of Modern Europe. And our teacher, Pim Huyne, was looking for students that were enthusiastic to make a podcast about the history of Utrecht. And it was really meant to be something not only about the city, but really with the city. So we started in October, November, and then in January there was a call for the inhabitants of Utrecht to send in questions. What do you want to know about the history? And we were a little bit afraid that there would be no questions and that it would, that we would have to think about stuff ourselves. But I think in the end we had about 80 people that had questions about the city from the Roman Empire until World War II and even later, more modern times. And then we had to select what we were going to talk about.
So we had a very broad selection at the start, and that was also maybe a bit of a challenge. And then we picked in the end 2 main questions we wanted to answer. And those became the 2 research topics we invested the most time in, I think. And also we had some small bonus questions we thought we could answer more quicker than the broader questions we wanted to investigate. And from that moment we got ourselves a project, and then I think the whole process started. A bit rocky at the beginning, and then we got there eventually.
Because we had a few meetings in person, and I think we only had about 2 weeks delay before our first episode aired. And we really had to switch because, we couldn't meet anymore. And then, Corona, we already talked about it. This is for us how almost the whole project was, behind a laptop talking with each other. And luckily we could meet physically to make the podcast, to talk with each other with a microphone. But most of the work we did on our own room. So it's actually kind of fitting that we're here again behind a laptop talking to you.
So you explained how the podcast came to be, but what would you say was the main aim of the DOMcast? Like, what did you want to achieve?
I think the main aim from the teacher was we all had our own aims. I think our own targets. The main thing for the teacher was to really to connect the students with the inhabitants of Utrecht, because we hear a lot when you study history. You hear a lot that we're in an ivory tower and we don't really feel connected with the people. And already talking about it in this way, you feel a bridge. And it's cultural history, especially, is more about filling in that gap between the university and the city, actually. So that was, I think, one of the main goals to have that connection and work together. And we really wanted to go to people's homes and interview them personally. So that also kind of changed, and we had to do a lot over the phone. But yeah, really bringing people together. It sounds a bit like bringing people together, but yeah, it was one of the aims of the
and
project.
I think also something we could add is making history something that's not locked up in some kind of a library or a museum, but you step beyond that and you want to show that it's alive and it's in the city. That history really is a thing that's there and not somewhere locked up, but that's all around you. And we saw that there was a lot of interest in the environment of Utrecht and the questions that it contained. And I think with that we showed that it's just not some kind of thing that's hidden somewhere.
And also really, how do you do historical research? That was like giving a look behind the scenes. That was also something Pim, the teacher, really wanted to show. What we make usually is we present a paper. That's like everything you do as a historian is you make papers, you read it, the teacher reads it, and that's it. And we wanted to show how we do that historical research, and also what do you do if you can't find the answers, because some things we just don't know. So it's already also a bit of trial and error.
Yeah.
So you already talked a little bit about how the process of starting the podcast came to be, but can you elaborate a little bit on that? Like you said that it was more difficult because of the current situation.
Well, I think, or did you want to say something more? Or?
Oh no, please.
I think that was in addition to the start itself, because at the start we were like, okay, we're going to do a podcast, but none of us had any involvement with podcasts before that. So that was something totally new for every one of us. And first we looked into making a podcast for everyone. Just how do you record things, how do you present things in a certain way that really is helping for your audience. But after that, we had to divide all the roles, because we were how many?
11 students.
I think 11 students in the end. And of course, you had to divide all the work in a way that really worked for us. And then also came Corona, so that made it even more difficult. And then we had to do all those things online. But in the end, I think after a couple of weeks, we got into some kind of a planning and a schedule.
Some things we had. I mean, everybody did some research, but some people were so far ahead with their research that it was almost too like we don't need the answers already, because we wanted to show how we got there, and we wanted to involve the audience. So if we remain with the question that maybe the people from Utrecht could help us, maybe they had the answers. And then we were so far in the research that we're like, we want to find it out along the way, and not everybody, everything in advance. And then, we had to discuss how do you, what is the kind of atmosphere you want to give, the vibe, do you want to present it like really strict, or do you want to have more of a conversation in the podcast? And that's something that every podcast maker has to think about.
Mm-hmm.
What's the atmosphere you want to
and I think also we started to learn more about sometimes you of course need to listen to the presenters, because that's giving you some anchor in all of it, but sometimes you need to jump to a telephone conversation, because that's something new, or a description of the sources, or dive into the history itself. That's you always need to change the pace a couple of times, and I think in the end we really learned how to do that.
One of the things we were told at first is like it's actually harder to make a podcast instead of like a TV show or documentary, While you would think, well, it's harder to really film and that kind of stuff, but everything you can see, you have to turn into sound, and that was really so that was a shame why we couldn't really go to people's homes, because also want to give that vibe, like what's it like to be with someone and you hear a clock ticking in background and that kind of stuff. All to give it more of a feeling, and that was also, I think, an extra challenge, because we were or in the studio or on the phone.
Yeah, you already told us that the podcast was about Utrecht and all the mysteries surrounding our beloved city. So I wanted to get into some of those as well, because something I've been wondering myself. Well, there is an unwritten rule that no building in Utrecht can be higher than our famous Dom Tower. So I was wondering if you can explain how that came to be.
Well, I think mostly that's one of those unwritten rules, of course, that is I think about the alluring image of the Dom Tower, because I think that's for a lot of people who are born in Utrecht and also later came to live in Utrecht, the Dom Tower, of course, is a symbol of the city, a monument that symbolizes the whole city. Maybe a symbol of I think of something right now, for example, is something that can bear a storm or can bear the Second World War, things like that. I think it's just a really big monument for the city, and maybe for a lot of inhabitants, that's something like nothing should be more important than our most important monument.
But it was also really discussed in politics, I think in the 70s or the 90s, because this is one of those questions. I think this was the first extra bonus episode one of our team members made. I think it was the 70s or the 90s that it was actually like discussed and made clear. All right, we don't build higher than Dom Tower. Exceptions are being made. Leidse Rijn, for example, they're building a tower that's 140 meters.
Yeah.
Of course, you can debate whether Leidse Rijn is Utrecht or not, but let's not go into that. But you won't find a building in the city center in the next years that's higher.
There was,
that's
I think,
also I think something that has to do with our time. For example, and this wasn't in the podcast, but the single. The waterway that is now back as it was before, it was something in the 70s. They thought it ought to be for cars. So maybe in 20 years' time, they will think the whole city needs to be new, modern, and we will have to build higher than the Dom Tower. So I think it's part of our historian's job to protect it as well, that it stays the highest building.
Well, I think also it almost happened when the ABN AMRO
Rabobank.
The Rabobank building almost became hybrid. They changed the plans, maybe to not on step on toes of a lot of people in Utrecht, and that's a wise decision, I think.
Yeah. Okay. And another thing that's related to that as well is like there used to be the Dom Church, but it has never been restored, and I was wondering why that is as well.
The easiest answer is money.
Yeah.
The short answer, they have tried it. There were plans a few times in the course of history, but usually it all came down to the money.
Yeah.
It also had I think a religious reason.
But it's mostly you have to think of the period as just sometime after that the French invaded Utrecht, and at that time it was just really expensive to rebuild the whole the whole center of the church, and also the religious argument is there that it used to be, of course, the very important for the see of Utrecht. It used to be a Catholic see, and of course with the Reformation in the Netherlands and becoming Republic of the Netherlands, of the 7 provinces. There was mainly Protestants. There was not really much of an animal to do that, to rebuild a thing that used to be Catholic. And yeah, it really kept on going like that. And in the 19th century, of course, the Catholic See, returned in Utrecht as well as in other provinces in the Netherlands. Catholics were more tolerated then again. But then the whole plan of the Dom Square as it is right now is really different.
And we don't need a bigger church actually. It's now really the square is I think more worth for Utrecht than it would be if it's a whole church. Maybe if in 100 years 10,000 of people want to go to church on Sunday, they might make new plans. But now I think the square is worth more for us.
And also you have to think about that there are plans to make some kind of structure in the square.
Once again, the money.
Yeah,
the money. It all comes back. Yeah, once again, it all comes back to the money.
That was cancelled then, because I know there was an idea for the future, or maybe in the coming years, that there was going to be an open kind of structure that was like the central building of the church, but it's still open. So there's still a square.
Did that already?
They did that already
with scaffolding, and they made it like the old construction.
It was just a one-time thing.
Yeah, and they tore it down again. It was like an art project or something, but I'm not sure.
Well,
I mean, yeah.
Well, yeah. So they did that, and then they thought again, maybe the money.
Yeah, it was I think an art project or something.
Okay, well,
I'm
so money was the biggest problem there.
Maybe too.
Yes.
Another thing that can be found in the city center is our famous broodje Mario, which is the most famous sandwich from Utrecht, which you also discussed in the podcast. So can you explain how that's also history?
Well, I think in the episode we had about it, it was really about Italians coming to Utrecht, because it was very famous for migrants from Italy to come to Utrecht and work here, and it started in plans during the 60s, 70s, and it's really something that's connected to the society of Utrecht. So there's some history there, and I think that really tied it to that. And just maybe the small question of where broodje Mario actually came from, that you can connect that to a larger story of people coming to the Netherlands and Utrecht and working here, and maybe trying to find a connection in a country they don't know with other people from their own country.
Yeah, that was one of the aims of the DOMcast as well. Take a small question and shine light on a broader topic. So we had one question about World War II, and then we told a story about the whole city, but still trying to answer that one question. And I think broodje Mario, we took that question and were able to tell something about the broader migration pattern and that kind of stuff. So that was also a good one to explain about.
Because
it was really hard to come into. I think Robert tried to call, and then it was really hard to get an answer from someone from broodje Mario. So it was really hard to really answer that question. So we made an episode about a broader topic.
And if you come to think about it, just you can answer that question: where did it come from? Well, it comes from the bakery at Oude Gracht that was founded there by Mario Nistro, who founded in 1977. And with that, you have your answer. It was invented there. But of course, it's a lot more interesting to look at the background story and other things you can tell from actually starting from a small question.
So can you elaborate a little bit on the bigger story behind that as well?
Well, in the episode, we interview some people that came to the Netherlands to work in, for example, factories, and they, for example, they came from different regions in Italy, and being in Italy, for example, also today, uh, people feel less Italian than you might think. They feel they're connected to Venice or Sicily or Rome or the region they come from. But when they, as one of people interviewed explained, is when they got to Utrecht, and there was a society for Italians living in Utrecht. The first notice, oh, here we are Italians, and back home we are all different kind of people. So that's for example one of the things you can pay attention to, or how they noticed how popular Italian food became in the Netherlands, or what work was like in the Netherlands. That it was that you had more contracts, for example, and there were a bit more hours than, for example, in Italy. But it was nicer to work in the Netherlands because it was a more steady job and everything was taken care of in a more worker friendly way. I think those are some of the topics we shed light onto. Yeah.
Okay. I was also wondering, as a lot has happened with the podcast as well, what would you say is the most exciting thing you found out while making the podcast?
That's a good one. Most exciting thing. Well, I think the most exciting thing for me was that we started the first 4 or 5 episodes were from the main series were about a family that was deported to various concentration camps across Europe, and it's a familiar story. I think everybody knows that people were deported and that kind of stuff, but what I found really exciting is it was really a specific question: what happened to this family? And that in the end there was an answer. We now know who they were, where they were sent to, who survived, who didn't, and one of the reasons that the owners of the current house, of that house where they live now, wanted to have an answer to that question is so that they could place a stolperstein. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's like in Dutch it's a struikelsteen. You can find it everywhere in the whole of Europe actually, and also in Utrecht. They're little small, like not bronze but massive. I don't know, something metal. Don't ask your student what kind of metal it is, but there are the names of the people that lived in the house and that were executed or killed while being deported. And the people that ask the question about that family now have an answer, and they can start the process of getting the stolperstein, the struikelsteen. And I think that's really usually you make an academic paper as a student, and now you really have something that actually helps someone with a specific question, and it's there somewhere. Those answers that people are not forgotten, and they can live again. Sounds a bit vague, but I think that was for me the most exciting thing.
Yeah, I think also that really. I'm trying to think of something else that was exciting, but I think also for me just starting this and thinking that maybe, for example, the whole thing would run dry, and you run into a wall, and it's like, oh, we can't answer this, but that was not the case, and it's just really amazing that we could help people.
And the other main question we had from a house with former students in the Voorstraat, and they wanted to know whether or not their house was a hotel, where people, it was a hotel, and they wanted to know if people really fled there in the war and really could hide there. And it was really hard to find an answer to that question. And then actually we took that house and found out way more about the Krakersbeweging, the movement in the 70s of squatters. Yeah. In the 70s, and we did an episode about that, so that's also a fun way to change the subject and show that we don't we can't always get the answers, but at least we were able to make a good episode. And
just showed the history of the former hotel and the house itself, and it's also really interesting.
Yeah.
Also from the vantage point, because we started from, what was it? First they thought there were Jews hiding in that house, and they wanted to know more about the story. Then it was about people who fled there during what's after
curfew.
During curfew, during the Second World War, and then we found out it was not really the case, but we sort of learned more about the Second World War at the time in Utrecht, and then we got to the squatters, and then we showed there was a history of the house, maybe the history you wanted to know, but the history that was actually there, and it's also kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yes. Because you also won the exceptional extracurricular achievement from the university. And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
It was it was a real surprise. I think we didn't expect that we would win. We were nominated by our teacher, and it was kind of a surprise. And I think there were 9 nominees for this award. 9 projects were nominated, and there was also a project, the Journal of Trial and Error, about research that might fail but still worth publishing, and was like, well, that's a really good academic kind of thing that they made. And it was something about composting somewhere in Zealand, and I was like, oh well, it's really like for the environmental sustainability, and I was like,
for the
people in that neighborhood, and I was like, well, that's also something the university is interested about. And I was like, well, yeah, we made a podcast about some interesting stories, but that's it, you know. So we were nominated. 31st of August was the start of the academic year, and instead of in a full dome church, it was in the aula of the academic building. And we went there with, it's great to be nominated. We're really proud that we were nominated. And then, we had to make a video.
Yeah.
Because usually they make a video, but now we had to film ourselves and that kind of stuff. So, but we were already making a bit of fun. Like, you have to make a shot, celebrate like you won. And we were also like, yay, we won.
In front of
from 2 months before. And we were like, nobody's ever going to see this. So why would we have to do it? But yeah, we made a shot that, yay, we won, yay, nobody's going to have to see it. And then we saw that shot.
How stupid it looked.
And it looked, and I was like, hey, that's us. And then it was like, oh, we won. And yeah, it was really great. And they really liked that we, what I talked about in the beginning, made a bridge between the university and the city smaller, and they also really would like to see that the project will continue. So I really do hope that there's a group of enthusiastic students that wants to invest their time next year and make a new DOMcast series.
Yeah, or add new stuff to the series that's there. Maybe that's going to be
second season, maybe. No, I hope it will.
I might. Yeah, I don't know my plans in January yet, because I'm finishing my master thesis this half year. But maybe, who knows?
Yeah, that's hope.
It's an interesting thing.
I have one more question, and after that we have time to answer questions from the people watching at home. So if you have any questions right now, please ask them and we can answer them. But I was wondering, what do you hope for the future of the DOMcast? Because you already talked a little bit about it, but what do you hope?
Well, I really hope that there's the possibility to make a second season. Our teacher that guided us in this project is going to make another podcast, but on a different topic. So he wants to continue the podcast, but and then he wants to discover new ways, and I think that's really great. Yeah, we did it for our internship. And I hope that there's the possibility that there can be a new group of interns that can make a second season.
Yeah.
But I think it has to be done from the university. I'm not a student anymore, so I don't have access to the library and that kind of stuff. So we really do need students, and I really hope that it's possible to have a second season.
Yeah.
And people, I think, want a second season. Want one.
It also depends on other stuff, because we were, I think, at our limit of Spotify minutes at a time, in the sense that you don't have to pay for it, and if you reach a certain height of minutes, then you have to pay for Spotify. And maybe if there's more support from the university, of course, that should be possible, because we had to put some things on the website because we couldn't post them on Spotify.
It's once again about the money.
Sometimes a really important issue, yeah. But yeah, it also depends on, because we started off with 11 students who all had different tracks, all did it for their internship, and now we're doing all different kinds of things. I think all of us are really doing really different things.
Yeah.
Maybe two. I think Robin and Robert are also in the cultural master.
Yeah.
We did. But yeah, it depends. Maybe in February there'll be something like this again. I hope.
I think the best thing would be with a new group of students to get new energy, new ideas, and I think we all would be happy to give our advice and tips and tricks and help them. It should be a new group, I think.
Yeah.
I already see some questions coming in.
Great.
And the first one is from ISO.
ISO.
Yeah.
That's a room.
I was wondering, did making this podcast change the way you look at Utrecht when walking through the city?
Yeah, kind of. I made a bonus episode about the canal, Oude Gracht, and I already knew a lot about the small stuff of the city, you know. You learn a lot when you study history. You also learn a lot from the colleges that are not really interesting and just Wikipedia. So there's already a lot of stuff I knew about it, but why the Oude Gracht is lower than the street level, and how the werfkelders, the basements, the wharves, how they came to be. I found it really interesting to have an excuse to investigate it and make a podcast about it. So it's small things. I think that I learned some new stuff.
Anymore. I made a bonus episode about waterstokers. If I translate that crudely, it's something like water heaters. It sounds really weird, but those were people that actually brought heated water to houses that needed it for washing and cooking. And really, that was a really big job, because a lot of houses didn't have gas and running water and heating as we have right now everywhere in the city. There were big neighborhoods that didn't have those kinds of luxuries, or at that time those were deemed luxuries, and right now they're just normal things we have. That's also something you think about, all things that are not there anymore, but also things that might still be there. You might look at a dump tower and think, there's a whole story behind this big monument of ours. So.
And every house has got their own history, and you see the city as a whole. And while investigating the question about what Jewish family lived in what specific house and what happened to them, then you realize how much history there is. You've got the history of the city of Utrecht. Every building has got their own history that's worth investigating.
Yeah. Like
so many stories to tell. So that was kind of an eye-opener.
The story of the Jewish family we found out about that. It was just in a normal street, the Jan van Skorelstraat. It's just a regular street in a neighborhood, not even in the historical center of Utrecht. So you can imagine just maybe walking through any street and imagine now maybe behind this door there's a whole story. Behind this door there's a whole story about this period. That's something you realize. and then it also invests more in the thought that history is really a living thing. It's all around us, and there's so many stories to tell. Maybe a lot of stories we might not even know. So, yeah.
I was wondering actually about the Oudegracht as well. So, can you explain a little bit more about why it is so much lower than the street?
Yeah, I will try to keep it short because actually, I kind of know, but I already had trouble like telling it in 5 minutes in a podcast, so I will have to make it like short. But it's you have to look at it the other way. Actually, the water level is like the main level, and the street is higher. So you don't actually don't need to ask why the water is low, but why the street is high. And it's just has to do with the collecting rubbish, for example. The street got higher and higher, but also if you live near a river, you don't want to live really close to the river, and you would prefer to live a little bit higher and a little bit further away. But as time continues, you have to you need the space, so you build close to the river but higher, so if it floods you then lose your house. And so actually in a lot of time it came to be what it is, and then they had to make a wall because it was getting too steep. And if you want a whole story, you just have to check Spotify, the website, and listen to this bonus episode, because I can explain better in more time. Unfortunately.
We also have a question from Lian. Firstly, she thanks you both for your talk, and she was wondering, what is, in your opinion, the most underexposed historical place of Utrecht you would like to learn more about?
Well, I think there's already really a lot known about the more historical period, the student resistance in the Second World War, and the Malibaan, where the headquarters of the NSB was, and also they resisted. Those are the stories you know, and also the story about the Roman Empire and their place at the square. It's all known. What I find interesting, where we both live, it's built in the 70s, and I think the expansion of the city starting from the Second World War until now is also a really interesting subject. It's not really maybe not as popular as the Second World War, and where does it stand? But I think that should also deserve sometimes some more like explanation about what choices were being made in the 70s and 80s. And I think that's also could be interesting. And if you want to make a podcast, it's really good to have that was also a reason why we didn't really want to make an episode about or a whole series about the Roman Empire. There's nobody that can tell you something.
Yeah.
And that is something you can show on television, but for a podcast, it's really important to also have people that maybe lived through it. And that's why I think if you want to make an episode, the Second World War is already almost too far away. Mm-hmm. And like the 70s, 80s, that those people you can still interview. And that's something, you don't have to wait. You don't want to wait too long to investigate things, because then everybody's dead and now we can interview them.
Yeah, and also maybe stories that are really maybe even closer home and connected to nowadays. I don't know if people know the Damander experience, that you walk through the city with someone from the homeless community. They can also tell a lot about Hoog Catharijne and Hoog Catharijne and Damander.
That's not Damander.
That's other.
Yeah, I know.
There's a city walk you can do together with someone from the homeless community. And they will also talk about, for example, Hoog Catharijne, because Hoog Catharijne used to be like a safe home for homeless people that went there when the weather was really cold, but also a place of a lot of problems and drug addicts in that mall. And those are some stories you not hear a lot about in Utrecht, but there are a lot of initiatives about that. So I think that's something nice in Utrecht that's already happening. But maybe investigating the neighborhoods that are added to the center we all know so well, and the center that's so much written about. This is a really interesting thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay. We also have a question from Yair, and he asks, are there some things that surprised you about the city? We're really out of the blue.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about this earlier tonight during this interview. How much the city also hasn't really changed, but I can't really remember why I thought it. But I remember reading something or hearing from someone, and I was like, it's the same kind of atmosphere you have got in the city right now. You also had like 40, 50 years ago, but I can remember why I thought so. So it's not really, not a really definite answer.
Maybe the response we had, like the 70, and then
how much
80 questions.
How much you started to live?
Yeah. Really all diverse questions about lots of periods, which is interesting. A lot of people came with really specific questions. Yeah, we live in this house and we have an extra part that was connected to the house and we think it was built at this time, but maybe you know more about that or can explain something about that. Really personal questions that really connected the history of Utrecht to personal stories. And that not all of the questions were really broad, or like sometimes we had questions like what was the Middle Ages like in Utrecht, and that's
interesting.
It's interesting, but it's a really broad question, and you can of course make a whole podcast about that. But to us, it was really interesting to see all those personal questions.
Yeah. And what surprised me was that people wanted to listen to us talking about history. Like I was like, let's do it. It's great. But also people that don't that aren't history students also found it interesting.
Yeah.
They responded, and that's a nice surprise.
And are there things really about the city that you found out and that you were like, wow, I really didn't know this before?
Not something that I think of right now. But it maybe also had to do because the student resistance and the resistance in the Second World War, and there are also already the known stories, and like you don't know all the specific and the details, but I can really think of something right now that was like, well, I didn't know, and now I learned.
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's something, but I can't think of it right now.
No, same for me, I think. Or sorry, we can answer this question properly.
But maybe it's for us already so like that we forgot that we were surprised that we learned about it.
Yeah, it might be from hindsight. For us, it's all normal territory. And also, for example, when we had an episode and we had to listen to an episode every time, and then at some point it's just a story that's there.
Sometimes we had to do like a few takes to get it good and sound, so that also that makes you wanna
We also have a question from Anouk, and she is wondering, do the mysteries you've uncovered, or it has mysteries, take over your daily conversations when you are talking to other people?
Well, I do know that I work at the terrace at the Oude Gracht, and sometimes people are like, there were some tourists from Brabant, and they were talking about the werfkelders and the basements of wharves, and I was really like, oh, I want to tell you so much about this right now because I learned so much about it that I really had to be like, well, let's not overwhelm them with it. For some people, maybe boring history lecture. So yeah, in the daily conversation, if it comes, the subject comes about it, I do like to tell it.
Yeah,
not in all everyday conversation.
Well, I think maybe for me it became more clearer to collect my thoughts on, for example, how history can be something useless for useful, sorry, useful for today, and also really interesting for people today. That's something I might become more clear about. And also maybe things, for example, I had a telephone conversation with someone from the Design Museum in Den Bosch, and I had some questions about the Nazi.
Nazi design.
Yeah, the Nazi design during the 1930s, and they had a whole topic in that museum about that. And I was just really interested in what we can explain about why it's interesting to look into heavy subjects like that, because I had a whole exhibition about it, and for some people it can be overwhelming or something wrong to show Nazi propaganda in that way, because maybe they would like to say, for example, it's interesting to also look at the heavy parts of history, because if you bury that history, it might even hurt more for the people that died during that time because of the Nazi regime, and also might not even help us to learn more about stuff like that. So that's also really interesting if you think about that, if you can explain more about why heavy subjects like that have to be explained as well. We can always talk about the good parts of history.
And there's also, because you said mysteries, and there was one question that still remains a mystery. There was a question about whether or not there were tunnels, secret tunnels underneath the Dam Square for tax avoidance or something like that. Like old tunnels underneath the Dam Church and Dam Square, and whether or not they were there. And we thought this is really interesting, but then it almost felt like a fantasy conspiracy kind of question. And I think those questions could also be really interesting, but we had to keep it like academic, and
because we didn't even know it.
We were like,
whoa,
is there some thing of evidence? Because it would be great to go into a tunnel underneath the Dam Church, but if they do exist, I think you need. I don't think you need history students to investigate that kind of mysteries, but journalists or conspiracy thinkers, and that could also be interesting. But
maybe archaeologists that could be really interesting.
So there are a lot of mysteries.
But of course, that's again with respect to the money.
The money.
Are there also any sad things you've uncovered while making the podcast?
Sad things?
No.
Not everybody from the family we investigated that were being deported in the Second World War survived. And we had diary journal fragments, and they were actually kind of like heavy to hear, and you really it becomes something like almost living, reading someone's, hearing someone's, well, not hearing someone's voice because we recorded it, but still kind of hearing someone's voice from the past, and how the daily life was in camp or during the war. So that could be kind of sad, but
It's also interesting to add to this is that Luca, who did most of the research on this topic, she did it really well, and we based most of our story. We talked about the family Müller. The Müller family is of her research, and she always sometimes said when we were writing the things we wanted to say during the episode, she was, no, we really have to discuss this, and she really felt connected to the story of the family. She also kept us on track and told us about what was important. We had to talk about the family, but she was really so much invested in it. She felt
wanted to tell their story, and and that's good to have someone like that on your team that knows so much about that family, way more than we could put in an episode. And we also sometimes wanted to make like an interesting episode, and how we can make it like maybe more exciting or something. But yeah, you also have to respect that it isn't just a story; it's someone's life, it's the family's life, and that was also, I think, like kind of teaching moment for me. Those are stories about real people, and if you read or make an episode about the Roman Empire or the Middle Ages, it's far away that you can feel a lot more in, and you can make it your own story. But this is their story, and you have to respect it. And
yeah. Because the DOMcast is more focused on the Second World War, if I'm right.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you chose this specific period?
Yeah,
we had a lot of questions.
Yeah, the main reason is I think in my opinion, when we started it, I was like, well, the Second World War, it's been done. It's already been done, and like so we wanted to investigate maybe some other periods. But, like the topic that had the most questions was Second World War. So it's still something that lives, and it's also something that can be investigated. Because what you said already, there were also a lot of questions about the Middle Ages, but then it was like, what did a city look like in the year 1000? Yeah, you have to be more specific because you can make a whole new series about it. So that was a reason, because there were so many questions, and also because maybe we could find something that still lived. That was one of the reasons why we didn't want to, like, we couldn't go further back than the Second World War, because then you couldn't interview those people, and in the end we weren't able to interview someone. That was also a reason why we chose the Second World War, and it was a good question.
Yeah, and I also think we wanted to investigate the questions that would give the most things to investigate, and also the most things to talk about. So we could make a lot of episodes about them. And those were questions that were also really personal. They were connected to people and the houses they live in. Also the one about the foresight that became one of the leading questions. And there was just something we thought about. Those are questions that are not only of citizens of Utrecht, but that are about their personal relation with history of Utrecht. So that really ciphered out all the other questions we had, and it came down to those two.
We have a more lighthearted question as well from Lily, who wants to know, Halloween is just around the corner, and can you share a good ghost story you might have come across?
That's not. I have a story. People might know it. It's not really a ghost story, but it involves myth and death of someone, and also because we don't really. It's definitely not true, but it's connected to the Dom Tower as well. I don't know if you know about the student from Unitas and the student from Veritas. That story?
Yeah, but it's with the core.
Oh no, exactly. It's somewhere from the core. So the student fraternity or society, and also involves Veritas or Unitas.
Yes, someone from Veritas or Unitas.
Someone from Veritas or Unitas, or just remember another society, and it's connected to. If there was a time, I think right now students from the core have a thing that they can't walk
underneath the tower.
Underneath the Dom Tower. And there used to be a time, for example, there was a bus going through that underneath the Dom Tower, and people from the core had to get out from one side and then run around the Dom Tower until the next bus stop, so they could get on the bus. The reason or the myth they created to not walk underneath the dome is because according to the myth or legend, the story, there was a student from the core, a member from the core was standing underneath the Dome Tower, so not in the tunnel but underneath it, and a student from Veritas or Unitas, we don't know exactly right now, wanted to commit
fell from the tower. I thought
it was he wanted to. He
fell or jumped from the tower,
and he fell on top of the member of the Corps, and the member of the Corps died, and the guy from Veritas Orientas survived. So it's some kind of I hope that's because I can't think of another.
Well, it's to add to this story, the Prince Maurits, I think, one of the royal Dutch family, actually stepped out of like a horse-drawn carriage one time that went underneath the Dom Tower because he already had been a member of the Corps, and he walked around because the tradition states. But yeah, I think of horror stories, Halloween, but ghost stories. There was a story about a mayor who was murdered or something. Some kind of Romeo and Juliet love story.
A really dramatic
two stories.
Thing. No, it's that's the thing, and he was killed by Lord Dirk from Castle of Ouda. So the city council in the city that's has a brewery and a restaurant now. And then he, I think, was involved in the whole.
I couldn't really follow it.
Oh, there was the thing about the rival.
Two rival families.
Yeah. So really a Romeo and Juliet story, and also something about a mayor of Utrecht that was murdered.
But are the same story or
those are two
different stories. Once upon a time, a mayor in Utrecht was murdered. That's. If you want to find out more about that, maybe this second season.
Yeah, I mean it's in the spirit of Halloween, so
yes.
We still have a couple minutes left, so if you have any questions, now is the time to send them in, so we can still answer them. And I see a question from Jair as well, and he asks, "What makes Utrecht unique in comparison to other cities in the Netherlands?" So, in other words, what makes Utrecht an interesting city?
Well, for me, it's like one of the biggest cities in the Netherlands, but it still feels really small. It has a lot of history, a historical center. Like Rotterdam, of course, was bombed during the war, so. Also has that's a story of a city with a lot of history and also a lot to investigate. It's a more modern city. I am originally from The Hague myself, which is also a historical. Yeah, we are both from The Hague, which is also a historical city. That it's unique in a different kind of way. I don't know. I think and people compare Utrecht to like more like a village. It's like a large village, and it's all close together, and you do feel connected. Maybe that's also because we both studied here, and it's like you have to be connected to the university and city, and we were brainwashed to believe it's a special city. It feels. I think it's something. It's hard to really explain. Yeah, there are a lot of ways why the city is unique, of course, but I think also something personal. It's for everybody. Different, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think for me also as well that Utrecht can feel like a city and a village in one. It can have the gezellig vibe.
Gewoon gezellig.
And I think that's the unique thing about Utrecht. Yeah.
Okay. I see one last question. I'm not entirely sure if I already asked it, but Nina also thanks you for your talk, and I think it's a nice note to end on. So she's wondering, what is the most unexpected mystery you've come across?
Well, if we talk about mysteries, it's one I talk about secret tunnels underneath the Dam Square and Dam Church. That's like the most absurd kind of mystery I've come across, but we're not sure if it's true. So if we stay with the truth, an unexpected mystery, bro.
Well, maybe the thing about the other main questions of the squatters, it was not something we were looking for in the beginning when we looked into the house at Voorstraat. And then out of nowhere came almost a story that was really, really interesting. It was about the squatters movement during the coronation of Queen Beatrix. And it was just really interesting that that story came up, and there was a whole other story behind it. So maybe there was something that surprised us in a way, because it was not really expected, and we actually came there for another story we failed to expect. But
And yeah, also a lot of things are connected, and it also adds a bit to the question why Utrecht is so special. But like we recorded some of the episodes in DBS studios for music recording and that kind of stuff. And we read somewhere about the owner that used to be a squatter in the 70s, and that also like, well, you're not looking for connections, and there they are.
yeah,
And that was also a fun surprise sometimes.
Okay. Well, firstly, Lily wants to thank you for your nice ghost stories. So, and secondly, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you very much, Thomas and Maurice, for answering all of our questions, and thank you to everyone for tuning in at home as well. And we will be back next week with a talk on international security in a changing environment with Tom Middendorp in Instituto Cervantes in Utrecht. And we are working really hard to make sure the talk will be live streamed as well, so stay tuned. Yeah, we hope to see you then. And for now, thank you. And have a nice evening, everyone.